California courts treat California regulations. Under the California Administrative Procedure Act, the APA, interested parties are authorized to file a lawsuit in order to challenge the validity of a regulation. So, under this approach, any interested person can obtain a judicial declaration regarding the validity of any regulation or even an OAL order of repeal by bringing an action for declaratory relief in Superior Court here in California. What kind of test does a court in this state use in order to review a regulation's validity? For a regular rulemaking, as opposed to an emergency one, the regulation may be declared to be invalid for a substantial failure to comply with the Administrative Procedure Act. For an emergency rulemaking, it could also be invalid for a substantial failure to comply with the APA, but an emergency regulation may also be declared to be invalid upon the grounds that the facts recited in the finding of emergency do not constitute an actual emergency. Now, as you might imagine, there are other grounds for a regulation to be declared invalid. For example, the agency's determination that the regulation is reasonably necessary to effectuate the purpose of the law, or the agency declaration is in conflict with substantial evidence in the record of the rulemaking file, or that it's not supported by substantial evidence. Now, according to the APA, there is only specified evidence that a court can consider in determining the validity of a regulation. First, the rulemaking file itself. For emergency regulations, the finding of emergency, an item that's required to be included in the rulemaking file but is not included in that rulemaking file, and any evidence that's relative to whether a regulation used by an agency is required to be adopted under the APA. It's also of interest that the publication of a regulation in the CCR, the California Code of Regulations, or the CCR supplement, the California Code of Regulations supplement, does raise a rebuttable presumption that the text of a regulation as published is the text of the regulation adopted. In addition, the courts in the state must take judicial notice of the contents of each regulation, which is printed or which is incorporated by appropriate reference into the California Code of Regulations as compiled by California's Office of Administrative Law.